My name is Ryan Cooper, and I was working private security at the Riverside Commerce Center in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I took the night shift because it was supposed to be quiet. I had no idea something in that building already knew who I was. They told me the post would be boring, and that was the selling point. Riverside Commerce Center had died before it ever opened, a half-built mall gutted by lawsuits and bad money, left to echo with plastic sheets snapping in the air vents and the faint smell of wet cement that never really dried. At night, the place felt refrigerated, like the life had been pulled out and stored somewhere else. My setup was a folding table dragged in front of the main entrance with 2 monitors, a landline that rarely worked, and a microwave someone had stolen from a break room years ago. The rules were simple: stay visible, keep the feeds up, and write down anything that moved that shouldn't. No patrols unless an alarm went off. Most shifts, I'd see nothing but my own reflection sliding across the dark glass of the stores. Around midnight, the building settled into its usual rhythm. Metal ticking in the ceiling, distant drips hitting tarp, the hum of lights that sounded almost like whispering if you let your mind wander too long. I made coffee, scrolled my phone, sent my wife a picture of the empty place. She wrote back what she always wrote. "Don't fall asleep." I told her I wouldn't. Truth was, I never did. Something about that building made sleep feel dangerous, like if I let myself drift, the place would notice and come check on me. By a little after 1, the air changed. Not colder, not warmer, just used, like someone had breathed it before passing it to me. My tongue tasted pennies. The lobby looked the same, but my eyes kept snagging on things I couldn't explain. A wet footprint near the escalator that faded while I watched. The elevator call button glowing even though the cars had no power. A smear along the glass doors at shoulder height like greasy hair had dragged across it. I told myself it was old grime, old wiring, old everything. Still, I checked the cameras again, slower this time, paying attention to corners I usually ignored. That's when I noticed the microwave clock across the lobby blink from 1:39 straight to 1:41, skipping a minute like it had somewhere better to be. I actually laughed under my breath. "Cheap wiring," I said, my voice too loud, bouncing back at me from places I couldn't see. I took a drink of coffee and felt the burn hit my stomach, grounding me, real, solid. Then the motion alert went off behind me, sharp, official, impossible to mistake, and one of the monitors switched to the camera pointed at my desk. I expected empty air, maybe a moth crossing the lens. Instead, I saw the top of my own head, my arms folded, my body slumped forward like I'd been out cold for a long, long time. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I was having some kind of break, like my brain had slipped a gear, and this was how it showed me. I touched my own face, dug my nails into my arm, even knocked my knee against the metal table to feel the sting. I was awake. I was standing. My heart was trying to climb out of my throat. But on the monitor, I was folded over in the chair like I'd shut down hours ago. My shoulders on the screen rose and fell in a slow, heavy rhythm, deeper than normal sleep. Like the body was being worked by something that knew how lungs were supposed to move, but didn't quite get the timing right. I leaned closer to the screen. My mouth in the footage hung open, and there was a shine at the corner of it, a thick string of drool pulling down toward the desk, stretching longer than gravity should allow, never breaking. I whispered, "No, no, no," without meaning to, like if I kept it quiet, I wouldn't make it worse. I grabbed the mouse and pulled up the timeline, my hands shaking so bad the cursor bumped everywhere except where I wanted it. The live time in the corner read 1:40 a.m. My watch said 2:18. 40 minutes gone like they'd been cut out with scissors. I dragged the video back. Midnight. There I was drinking coffee. 12:32, rubbing my neck. 12:58, checking my phone. I watched myself in perfect detail, remembering each moment as it happened, until 1:03 when my eyelids drooped. I waited for the part where I'd snap back awake, embarrassed at almost dozing. It never came. At 1:05, my head dropped, chin to chest, and I stayed there, minutes stacked. No shift in posture, no scratch, no swallow, not even a breath big enough to change my shirt. And while I watched, something else started to show up. The skin on my arms in the footage darkened, veins pressing up like worms pushing under dirt. My fingers curled tighter, nails digging into the tabletop, slow enough you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. A wet spot began to spread beneath my face, thicker than spit, seeping outward in lazy branches. I could almost smell it, copper and rot, even though I was across the lobby. I looked down at the real desk in front of me. Dry, clean, no stain. Behind me, the motion alert chimed again. The same camera, still me in the chair. But now the head was starting to lift. I couldn't breathe. I watched my own head rise on the monitor the way you'd watch a body coming up from deep water. Slow, heavy, wrong. My neck in the footage didn't straighten all at once. It clicked up in pieces, stopping, jerking, then going again, like someone learning how hinges worked. When my face finally turned toward the camera, I felt my knees loosen. The eyes were open, but they weren't aimed right. One drifted a little higher than the other, both too glossy, reflecting light like marbles. My mouth sagged, strings of that dark saliva pulling and snapping across my chin, dropping to the desk in thick dots. I wiped my own mouth without thinking. Dry. My skin crawled so hard it hurt. "That's not me," I said, and hearing it out loud almost helped. Almost. On the screen, the thing wearing me twitched, like it had caught the sound through the wires. Its lips started working, trying shapes, like it had found a language, but didn't know which one to put on. The jaw opened wider, wider than it should. I heard a faint pop from the speakers, like cartilage giving up. Something slid in its throat, rising, pushing against the skin from the inside. I stumbled backward from the desk and hit the cold tile. The chair in the video scraped across the floor. I didn't hear that sound in the lobby, but I felt it in my teeth, a vibration that made my vision tremble. The thing stood, my height, my clothes, my stupid work badge hanging from its chest. But the way it balanced wasn't human. Its weight kept drifting forward, like it expected to fall, and never did. When it took a step, the knee bent too far, then corrected itself with a snap. Its mouth kept moving, opening and closing, practicing. I realized with a sickness that made me gag. It was rehearsing my face, learning it. I spun around, expecting to see it behind me, but the lobby stayed wide and empty, lights buzzing, doors shut. When I looked back at the monitor, it was closer to the camera now. So close I could see the skin stretching where the jaw had unhooked. And then, from the desk speakers, in a voice dragged across gravel and water, I heard it try its first word. "Hey!" The word came through the speaker, wet and busted, like it had crawled across broken glass before reaching me. Not loud, not a shout, just casual, friendly even. The kind of thing you say when you spot someone across a parking lot. My body reacted before my brain did. I backed away from the monitors, palms up, whispering, "Nope, nope, nope," like I could decline it. On the screen, the thing leaned closer to the camera, fascinated, like it was studying how sound left its mouth. Its tongue rolled around too big for the space, bumping teeth, tasting the air that belonged to me. Then it tried again. "Hey," cleaner this time, almost right. A shiver dragged down my spine so hard my legs gave out, and I had to grab the table. I kept waiting to hear footsteps in the lobby, something to match what I was seeing. But the building stayed dead, lights humming, plastic sheeting breathing in the vents. The only movement was on the monitor. It lifted one of my hands and gave a small wave, practicing normal, practicing harmless. Then it lowered the hand and turned its head like it had remembered an appointment. The camera angle changed automatically as it walked out of frame. I didn't touch anything. One by one, the feeds picked it up, handing it off deeper into the building, farther from the entrance, moving with a slow confidence that made my stomach twist. It passed storefront gates, dark windows, piles of construction trash. Its walking got better the longer it did it, smoother, less broken. Every few steps its mouth would open and close, whispering to itself, trying tones, trying warmth. I realized it wasn't coming for me. Not yet. It was touring, getting familiar, like someone walking through a house they planned to live in. A fear hit me that was bigger than panic, bigger than running. It was patience. Whatever that thing was, it had time to learn every inch of my body, every habit, every little way I moved. And when it was ready, it wouldn't need me in the building anymore. On the last camera in the chain, it stopped at a dark hallway that led to the emergency exit. The push bar waited at the end under a red sign. It looked straight into the lens, and it smiled like it had finally found the door. If that thing made it past the door, it got everything. My car with the dent in the bumper, the picture of my wife on the dashboard, the spare key under the mat, the way the porch light at home flickered before it stayed on. It would walk straight into my life, and I'd be the mistake nobody could explain. I slammed the lockdown switch so hard it hurt my palm. The shutters over the exit started dropping, metal grinding down inch by inch. Outside the glass, the man wearing my face didn't panic. He just watched, curious, like he'd never seen this part before. Then he stepped closer into the light. His smile wasn't wide anymore. It was focused, studying me. Behind him, I noticed another shape on the pavement, stretched long by the lamps. At first I thought it was just his shadow, but it didn't match him. It was taller, bent wrong, head brushing the top of the doorway. It leaned toward the glass, even though he stood still. My mouth went dry. The man outside raised his hand and knocked once, gentle, like he didn't want to wake a baby. The shutters kept falling, halfway down, a quarter left. He tried the handle out of habit, still polite, still pretending. Then his reflection blinked before he did. I staggered back from the entrance, heart beating so hard my vision jumped. In the dark glass, the face looking at me from inside the lobby wasn't moving right anymore. My reflection lagged, then smiled on its own, slow and pleased, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I touched my cheeks, my mouth, trying to match it, but it stayed a half second ahead, rehearsed, confident. Outside, the man's patience thinned. He knocked again, harder, and the tall shadow behind him folded down, pressing closer, trying to pour itself into the outline of him. The shutters trembled, reversing a few inches with a scream of metal. Something in the building had changed its mind. "No," I whispered, backing away, but the reflection didn't follow. It stayed at the door, eager, lips parting. The man outside finally looked confused, like he was realizing he might not be the one meant to go home. The last thing I saw before the lights burst and the monitors died was my reflection reaching for the lock from the inside and smiling at both of us. My name is Melissa Grant, and I live at the very end of Sycamore Drive in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where the pavement narrows, the mailboxes lean a little, and the dark feels thicker than it should. I got home late from work, arms aching, brain numb, already planning to heat leftovers and fall asleep on the couch. The neighborhood looked normal in that eerie, too quiet way it sometimes does after midnight. No TVs glowing, no cars passing, just the buzz of the street lamp and the rattle of dry leaves skating across the road. I opened my mailbox expecting bills and grocery coupons, but something glossy was sitting on top, face down, like it had been placed there carefully for me to notice. No stamp, no address, just my name written in blocky letters that pressed so hard the ink had bled through. I remember glancing up and down the street, half expecting someone to step out from behind a tree and yell, "Got you!" No one did. Every house looked asleep, windows black, doors shut, the whole world, pretending it wasn't watching. When I turned the card over, my chest tightened so fast it hurt. It was my house, taken close enough that I could see the scratch on the storm door and the crooked number 3 in my address. My car was in the driveway, still dusty from the gravel lot at work. The porch light was on, and through the front window I could see the faint shape of my living room lamp. The picture had been taken recently, maybe minutes ago, but the angle made no sense. It wasn't from the sidewalk or the street. It was higher, looking down, as if the photographer had been floating above the lawn or standing on something that didn't exist. My scalp prickled, that awful crawling feeling like bugs moving through my hair. I flipped the postcard with fingers that didn't feel like mine anymore. 4 words were written in thick black marker, slow and careful, almost affectionate. "Nice place you have." I looked at the house again, and for the first time since I bought it, it didn't feel like mine. It felt like something I had walked into by mistake, something that had already been occupied long before I ever found the keys. I didn't want to touch the mailbox when I got home the next night. My whole body felt warned, like an animal smelling smoke before it sees fire. The porch light painted the driveway in a dull yellow wash, and every shadow seemed deeper than it had any right to be. For a minute, I just sat in my car with the engine running, staring at the front of the house, trying to convince myself that fear couldn't actually change anything physical about a place. The windows were the same, the siding was the same, but the longer I looked, the more it felt staged, like a photograph pretending to be real. Finally, I forced myself out, shoes crunching on the gravel, breath loud in my ears. The mailbox creaked when I opened it, and I swear that sound shot straight through my spine. There it was again, another postcard, no stamp, no address, waiting. I could feel whoever left it, not see them, but feel them nearby, like a held breath that hadn't been released yet. The image on the front stole the air from my lungs. It was my living room window, framed tight, close enough that the glass reflected the person taking it. But the glare from inside blurred their face into a pale smear. My curtains were open. Inside, under the warm light, I stood frozen mid-step, phone to my ear, mouth open in the middle of a word I couldn't hear. I remembered the call. I remembered laughing at something my mom said, and behind me, Barely noticeable unless you looked too long, there was a shape where the hallway met the dark. Taller than the doorway. Wrong. My stomach folded in on itself. I felt pressure build in my head, hot and heavy, and I thought I might faint right there in the driveway. I turned the card over, already shaking, already knowing it would be worse. You look better when you don't know I'm there. Something wet hit my hand before I realized I was crying. I looked back at the window, at the hallway beyond it, and understood with sick clarity that whoever took the picture hadn't just been outside. They had been near me, close enough to hear my voice, close enough to smell my shampoo, close enough that if they had reached out their arm, they might have brushed the back of my neck. And the worst part, the thing that made the world tilt, was knowing they had chosen not to. After reading those words, I stopped believing distance meant anything. Outside, inside, across the yard. It didn't matter anymore. Whoever this was had already proven they could stand close enough to breathe the same air and somehow remain invisible. I went into the house without turning on the lights, heart punching against my ribs, listening for anything that didn't belong. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes ticked in the walls. Normal sounds, but each one felt rehearsed, like the house was trying too hard to convince me it was empty. I locked the door, then checked it again, pressing my forehead against the wood as if I could feel another heartbeat on the other side. I kept picturing that blurred reflection in the glass from the photo, wondering if the camera had hidden a smile, or teeth, or eyes fixed lovingly on the back of my head. I told myself I needed proof that I was alone, something solid, something I could point to later and say, see, I imagined it. So I grabbed my phone, opened the video app, and began walking through every room, narrating under my breath like I was filming evidence for a trial I knew was coming. The kitchen was clear, the bathroom too. When I reached the hallway, the air changed. Warmer, thicker, carrying a faint odor that made my stomach twist. Not garbage, not mold. Something animal, coppery, like pennies sucked too long between your teeth. My skin tightened. I whispered hello, hating how small I sounded, and the word seemed to disappear before it traveled more than a few feet. Halfway down the hall, I noticed my bedroom door wasn't open the way I'd left it. It rested almost shut, the narrow gap between the frame and the wall showing only a blade of darkness. I was sure I'd left it wide when I rushed out that morning. I was obsessive about things like that. I stepped closer, every muscle in my body begging me to stop, and that's when I heard it. A soft movement from inside. Not footsteps, not shifting furniture. Breathing. Slow, steady, patient breathing, like someone pretending to be asleep while listening for the moment you finally get brave enough to come nearer. My phone trembled in my hand. I thought about running, about the car, about never coming back. But the need to know outweighed the need to survive. I reached for the knob, already understanding that whatever waited on the other side had been expecting me for a very long time. The metal of the knob felt warm, and that scared me more than anything I'd seen so far. Warm meant recent. Warm meant touch. The breathing on the other side stopped the second my fingers closed around it, like whoever stood in my room had been waiting for that exact contact, rehearsing the silence the way an actor waits for a cue. I realized I was crying without making any noise, tears sliding over my lips, salty and cold. Part of me begged to run, but another part, the stupid, stubborn part, needed the nightmare to have a face. I turned the handle. The latch clicked loud in the quiet hallway, a gunshot of a sound, and I pushed the door inward inch by inch. At first I saw only pieces, the edge of the dresser, my unmade bed, the lamp. Everything where it belonged. Too normal. That made it worse. I took one step inside, phone raised, whispering, "Please don't be there. Please don't be there." And then the smell hit full force. Rotting sweat, old blood, human breath trapped in a closed place for too long. My eyes watered. Something shifted behind me. I spun, expecting him at my back, but the hallway was empty. When I turned forward again, I finally understood. The closet door, which I always kept shut, stood open by a few inches, just enough for darkness to pool out like liquid. I don't know how I hadn't noticed it before. Maybe I had, and my brain refused to process it. My light slid across the gap, and I saw fabric moving softly, disturbed by someone trying not to disturb it. A shoe nudged against another. Then I saw the eye, wide, glassy, reflecting my phone like a tiny moon. It blinked once, slow, almost shy. I stumbled backward, but before I could scream, something burst from the closet with the speed of a dog breaking a leash. A man unfolded himself from the clothes, skin gray with grime, beard wet around the mouth, ribs pressing against stretched fabric that might once have been a shirt. He smelled like the crawl space under a slaughterhouse. He didn't grab me. He didn't have to. He just stood there between me and the door, smiling with cracked lips, holding a camera that was already pointed at my face. The flash exploded white and spots filled my vision. When they cleared, he whispered, almost hurt, almost gentle, "I thought you'd never open it." My legs finally remembered how to move, and I ran. I don't remember how I got outside. 1 second, the hallway was collapsing around me. The next, I was tearing across the yard, lungs shredding, gravel biting into my bare feet. I heard the door behind me bang against the wall, but I didn't look back. I knew if I did, if I saw him coming, my body would lock up, and that would be it. I ran to the nearest porch with lights on and hammered the door until my hands went numb. A man I barely knew opened it, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a question. I kept trying to talk, but the words tangled together. Closet, camera, living in there. He sat me at the kitchen table while someone else called the police. Through the window, I could see my house, calm and dark, giving away nothing. No movement, no figure chasing after me. Just the quiet place I'd trusted, sitting there like it had no idea what it had done. When the sirens finally arrived, red and blue washing over the street, relief hit me so hard I almost blacked out. They found him exactly where I knew he'd be, not hiding, waiting, standing in the middle of my living room like a host expecting guests. I watched from across the street as officers dragged him out, his heels leaving dark streaks on the floor. He kept craning his neck toward me, trying to catch my eye, smiling that broken, grateful smile, as if this whole thing had been a misunderstanding we'd laugh about later. They put him in the cruiser, and he never stopped staring. I moved in with my sister the next morning. I left furniture, clothes, everything. None of it felt worth touching again. Weeks passed. Detectives called. Paperwork happened. They told me he'd once owned the place, that something in him had snapped after he lost it, that he'd been slipping in and out for longer than anyone could figure. I tried to rebuild a routine, tried to believe walls meant protection again. Yesterday evening, I went to grab the mail from my sister's box, finally feeling almost human. A single postcard rested on top. No stamp, no address. My fingers turned useless as I flipped it. The photo showed her living room, the couch, the TV, and me at the mailbox, holding the card, taken from directly behind, written on the back, careful and familiar. You left without saying goodbye." I looked up at the house, and for the first time, I understood the worst truth of all. He had learned how to follow. For a while, I tried to cope, telling myself that the nightmare had a single face, one man the police could pull out of my life and lock behind a door, because anything more would have broken me. But some of the pictures never made sense. A few were taken from angles too high for him, others from near the floor, and more than once the shadow on the wall looked wrong for his shape. They told me fear can split things, that the mind fills empty spaces with extra monsters. I want to believe that, I really do. But last night I found a photo on my phone I don't remember taking. I'm asleep in my bed, covers pulled to my chin, the room washed in moonlight. The picture is taken from the upper corner, looking down. And on the carpet near the door, there are two shadows, stretched long and patient. One of them is holding the camera. My name is Ethan Carter, and I live in Riverside, California. For the past month, I've been waking up every night at exactly 2:17 a.m. to the sound of someone breathing in my room. I live alone, and I've checked every corner, every closet, every crack. Yet every night it's there, heavy, wet, deliberate breathing, like it's right next to me. I need someone to know this story because I don't know how much longer I can handle it. It started innocently enough, or at least I thought it did. I woke up one Thursday night, my phone blinking 2:17 a.m., to a sound that made my chest freeze. At first, I thought it was my imagination, the kind of noise your brain invents when the apartment is too quiet. But then I heard it again, slow, wet, deliberate breathing. It wasn't my own. It was coming from somewhere in the room, close, almost impossibly close. My apartment is tiny, a single bedroom with a dresser shoved against one wall, a closet I never use, and a bed shoved into the corner. I froze under my blankets, heart hammering so loud I swore it would give me away. The breathing didn't move at first. It just hovered, heavy and deliberate, like someone was leaning over me, counting the beat of my chest. My first thought was that it had to be a dream, but the smell of iron, sharp, metallic, and wet, filled my nose, making me gag. It wasn't just sound, it was presence. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. When I slowly flicked on my phone's flashlight, the beam cut across the room, landing on the dresser, the empty closet, the posters on the wall. Nothing. Every shadow seemed perfectly still, yet the breathing continued, as if it existed just beyond the reach of light, waiting. I tried to tell myself it was stress, that my brain had made up a presence after too many late nights at work. But I knew deep down it wasn't my mind playing tricks. I reached for the phone to record it, hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. And that's when the air shifted, icy against my arm, like a breath had just passed over me. My bed creaked under weight that wasn't mine. The breathing slowed, dragging, wet and viscous, as if it was tasting the air. Then it circled the room, the sound moving from the right side of the bed to the left, making me feel trapped, surrounded by something I couldn't see. I whispered into the dark, "Who's there?" My own voice sounding alien in the silence. Nothing, not a footstep, not a shuffle. But I could feel it, crouching in the shadows, watching. Minutes stretched into unbearable hours until, finally, the breathing stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was worse than the noise, a vacuum pressing into my chest. I sat there in the dark, listening to my own ragged heartbeat, staring at walls that were suddenly alien. I didn't sleep again that night. When dawn broke, I thought I'd imagined it, but on the side of my pillowcase, there were wet, slick smudges that weren't mine, like someone had been lying there, inches from my face. I threw the sheets in the laundry, but the memory of that breath stayed with me, lingering in my chest, a prelude to whatever was coming next. After that first night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in my bed. I tried the couch, the kitchen floor, even curled up in the bathroom, but wherever I went, the same heavy, wet breathing returned at exactly 2:17 a.m. That night, I decided I couldn't just lie there and wait. I grabbed a baseball bat and my phone flashlight, and I waited, staring into the shadows. The minutes dragged. Then the breathing began again, slow, deliberate, coming from the corner near my closet. My stomach twisted, and a wave of panic hit me like ice water. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the bat. Instinctively, I whispered a prayer I remembered from Psalm 91:2, under my breath. The Lord is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. The air in the room thickened, heavy and almost solid, like it was pressing against me. Shadows stretched and warped, pooling near the closet, moving in ways they shouldn't. I swung the bat once, twice, but the pressure against my ankle, cold, wet, and insistent, told me I hadn't swung at air. It was close, circling, tasting my fear. Then I saw it, or at least I thought I did. A hunched shape crouched in the corner, limbs unnaturally long, head tilted in a way that made my chest tighten. Its black eyes reflected the dim light, staring straight at me, and the smell hit me, rotten, metallic, coppery, like blood and decay mixed together. It vanished the instant I blinked, but the weight remained, moving silently around the room. Then came the whispers, low, guttural, repeating a sound I couldn't understand, almost like it was taunting me. I stayed frozen on the floor, back clutched to my chest, listening as the air grew thick, suffocating. And then, as abruptly as it arrived, the breathing stopped. Silence swallowed the room, worse than the noise, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. When dawn finally crept through the blinds, I noticed new scratches on the dresser. Deep, jagged, claw-like marks that hadn't been there the night before. My blood ran cold. It was learning, watching, waiting. And I knew, without a doubt, that 2:17 a.m. tomorrow would bring it back. Closer, smarter, hungrier than before. Morning didn't feel like rescue anymore. Sunlight only showed me how wrong everything had become. I walked through the apartment noticing little shifts that made my skin prickle. A chair angled toward the hallway, cabinet doors left open. My shoes turned so their toes pointed at the bedroom, like arrows. I kept telling myself I was exhausted, that panic was rewriting my memory, but the place felt handled, like someone had practiced living in it while I slept. Along the wall outside my room, a dull streak caught the light, glossy and uneven, the height of a shoulder. I wiped it away with paper towels, yet the stink lingered, stale, humid, like breath trapped in a jar. At work, I kept losing minutes, staring at nothing, certain if I looked down at my phone, the time would read 2:17, even in the afternoon. Every reflective surface betrayed me. In the black screen of my computer, my outline sagged, head drooping forward, as if something hung from my back. I drove home, fighting the urge to check the rearview mirror because I already knew I wouldn't be alone. Something had figured out how I moved, how I thought. It was no longer visiting, it was accompanying. I swore I wouldn't sleep. I turned on every lamp, the television, even the stove light, building a circle of brightness like it might fence the dark out. But I'd learned a new rule. When I looked straight at them, shadows behaved. When I blinked, they rearranged. They crowded door frames, pooled along the ceiling, thickening like bruises. My jaw ached from clenching. At 2:16, I stood up, heart racing, desperate to interrupt the pattern. Maybe if I refused to be in one place, it couldn't find me. The clock rolled to 2:17, and every bulb burst into black at once. Not a pop, not a flicker, just gone, like sight had been erased. In the instant after, I heard weight settle behind me. Cushions compressed with a slow sigh. A smell rolled over my shoulder, warm and rotten. Something touched the back of my head, not fingers, more like lips grazing hair, testing. I moved and it moved, perfectly timed, keeping itself just outside the little space my eyes could understand. I stumbled toward the hallway, but it kept angling me, steering me with quiet pressure, guiding me back to the bedroom door. I knew then the rest of the apartment had only been rehearsal. Whatever waited in that room wasn't hiding anymore. Tonight, it wanted me exactly where it had first found me. I reached the bedroom door and felt it waiting on the other side, not like something standing there, but like the room itself had lungs, drawing slow, patient breaths. My hand hovered over the knob while the dark pressed at my back, urging me forward with gentle, unstoppable insistence. I told myself to run for the front door, but my body didn't listen. Under my breath, barely louder than a thought, I forced the words out. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. The handle turned under my palm, warm and damp, and the door eased open with a tired creak. The smell hit first, thick rot wrapped in that copper tang, heavy enough to taste. My bed had been dragged away from the wall and angled toward the center like an offering. The sheets sagged, soaked in dark patches that glistened. Something had nested here. I stepped inside because I understood I was already inside, had been for days, maybe longer, and the door swung shut behind me without sound. The air moved differently in there, tighter, organized. The corners felt occupied, not by shapes, but by intention, like attention focusing from every direction. My ears rang. I realized the apartment wasn't the thing's home. This room was. Everything else had only been a hallway leading back to it. The floorboards gave a slow complaint beneath my weight. I wanted to vomit, to scream, to do anything human, but the room stripped those ideas away and replaced them with obedience. The closet door stood open, and inside the dark hung wrong, deeper than the space allowed, like a throat widening. I took a step back and bumped into the bed. The mattress shifted behind me, reacting, alive with movement under the fabric. Something crawled there, sliding from one side to the other, mapping my outline from below. My skin prickled as if insects were moving beneath it in answer. Then the sound began again, not around me, not behind me, but under me. A slow inhale pushing the sheet up against my calves. I looked down and saw the surface rise, forming the length of a face pressing upward, stretching the cloth until it thinned. I could make out the shape of a mouth opening. The realization broke something in me. It hadn't been trying to get into the room. It had been waiting for me to come back so it wouldn't have to follow anymore. The door rattled once, sealing us in, and the breathing deepened with relief. The sheet stretched higher between my legs, thinning over the outline of teeth that pushed upward from inside the mattress. I tried to scramble away, but the bed gripped me, foam collapsing around my knees like hands kneading dough. The mouth opened wider, and the fabric split with a soft tearing sound, strings of stuffing clinging to something slick underneath. A rush of warm air poured out, sour and damp, carrying a pulse that throbbed against my shins. I could hear it swallowing before it touched me. My heel slipped into the opening, and pain detonated up my leg, sharp and grinding, as if rows of pebbles were crushing bone. I screamed until my throat tore, clawing at the headboard, but the room absorbed the sound, kept it, folded it back into the walls. The pressure dragged me inch by inch, my body feeding forward. I felt the pull tighten around my calf, skin peeling, heat spilling down my ankle. Whatever lived inside the bed shuddered with hunger. And I understood this was what it had been building toward since the first night. No more watching, no more circling, just taking. Then, just as suddenly, it released me. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Certain pieces of me were missing. But when I grabbed my leg, there was no blood, no wound, only a deep ache like a memory pressed into muscle. The bed looked ordinary again, torn sheet gone, mattress smooth, waiting. My breathing came in ragged hiccups while the room settled, satisfied, like it had proven something. I staggered up, half laughing, half crying, whispering that it wasn't real, that exhaustion had finally broken me. I reached for my phone to check the time. 2:16 a.m. My stomach dropped. The digital numbers trembled and turned. 2:17. From everywhere at once, the inhale returned, enormous, intimate, filling the space behind my eyes. I felt it move through me, not outside, but in my chest, expanding my ribs with careful ownership. My mouth opened, and another breath came out that didn't belong to me. Slow, wet, content. I watched my reflection in the dark window tilt its head, studying the room like it was new, like it had finally arrived home. I don't have much time. It goes quiet sometimes, like it's busy figuring something out, and that's when my head feels clear enough to type. My hands don't always listen. They keep pausing above the keys, like they're waiting for permission. The clock on my laptop says 2:16 a.m. I can feel it stretching inside my chest, testing my ribs the way you test a door before you open it. Every breath is harder to tell apart now, mine or its. If this stops suddenly, that means it finally pushed through. And if you ever wake up at 2:17 and hear breathing that isn't yours, don't lie there trying to understand it. It already understands you.